So right now the show is untitled. But before we started the show, I did a bunch of focus groups. And I asked women, what were they?
Everyone thought the real drama of It Ends With Us was confined to the screen until the lawsuits hit the headlines. What began as a star-studded adaptation of Colleen Hoover's beloved novel spiraled into a storm of legal warfare, leaked texts, and behind-the-scenes chaos that now threatens to topple careers and reputations alike. How did a love story turn into one of Hollywood's most explosive scandals? It started with ambition and ended in accusation. When It Ends With Us became a viral phenomenon on Book Talk, a film deal was inevitable. Fans rejoiced when Blake Lively was cast as Lily Bloom, with Justin Baldoni, known for his emotional depth and sincerity, set to direct. Blake brought star power. Justin brought sensitivity. For a time, it seemed like the perfect match. Blake praised the project's raw themes of trauma and healing, while Colleen Hoover's direct involvement reassured readers that the adaptation would honor the novel's emotional core. But by mid-2024, the cracks began to show. Rumors spread of endless rewrites, tense creative meetings, and blurred boundaries between star and director. Blake allegedly stepped into roles beyond acting, rewriting scenes, influencing edits, and reshaping the story itself. Some insiders claimed she wanted to elevate the material. Others accused her of hijacking the production and sidelining Justin's vision. Whispers even suggested that Ryan Reynolds quietly polished portions of the script. What began as collaboration soon devolved into a power struggle that spilled far beyond the set. By late summer 2024, quiet tension had turned into tabloid fire. Reports of creative differences became explosive headlines, lively battles Baldoni over control. Then came the darker twist, murmurs of sexual harassment and misconduct. Anonymous sources claimed Blake endured a toxic, hostile work environment under Justin's direction. No police reports were filed, no formal complaints submitted, just whispers amplified through interviews and social media. Yet in Hollywood, perception moves faster than proof. Public sympathy swung toward Blake as comment sections ignited. Justin, once praised for his empathy and professionalism, was suddenly branded domineering and unsafe. His initial silence only fueled speculation, allowing rumor to harden into narrative. But behind the scenes, Justin was far from passive. He began building his own case, tracking leaks, tracing emails, and uncovering what he believed to be a coordinated PR assault. One name surfaced again and again: Leslie Sloan, Blake's longtime publicist and a known powerhouse in entertainment media. Some suspected she had weaponized her connections, feeding journalists selective evidence to cast Blake as the victim and Justin as the aggressor. And then, the receipts dropped. Leaked messages allegedly exchanged between Daily Mail reporters and Justin Baldoni's legal team revealed direct correspondence with Leslie Sloan, suggesting she had been orchestrating the negative coverage. In one exchange, a reporter admitted he'd been pressured to include claims provided by Sloan. In another, he hinted that the narrative kept shifting depending on the needs of Blake Lively's camp. The most troubling evidence came from early internal notes dated August 2024, which initially referred only to creative tension and artistic disagreements. Later, those same incidents were reframed as harassment, recast to create a more explosive story for the press. To many observers, it appeared to be damage control disguised as outrage, a strategic rewrite designed to protect Blake's image while redirecting the blame for a chaotic shoot onto her director. Whether calculated or not, the fallout was catastrophic. Studios began quietly distancing themselves. Fans split into camps. Journalists and influencers took sides, amplifying the divide. Justin's once respected reputation crumbled in real time as Blake's public sympathy soared. What had begun as a passionate artistic partnership now looked like the post-mortem of a broken collaboration and the birth of a full-blown Hollywood war. The adaptation that had promised emotional depth and cinematic beauty had transformed into one of the industry's ugliest controversies. But Justin Baldoni was finished playing defense. While the media dismantled his image, he wasn't preparing talking points or social media statements. He was preparing a case. A $400 million defamation lawsuit that promised to expose every hidden message, text thread, and backroom maneuver behind the smear campaign. What once looked like gossip was about to become evidence. As headlines multiplied, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just a creative disagreement. It was an information war, complete with generals, strategies, and collateral damage. At the center stood Blake Lively's powerful publicist, Leslie Sloan, and the British tabloid giant, the Daily Mail. What once appeared to be organic outrage now looked like a choreographed PR offensive, with stories crafted not to report the truth but to shape it. Day after day, new articles dropped, some portraying Blake as a feminist icon reclaiming her power, others painting Justin as the villain of his own production. The war for public opinion was no longer behind the scenes. It had gone fully cinematic. Others painted Justin Baldoni as a controlling relic who couldn't handle a strong woman, but sharp-eyed observers began to notice something strange. Many of the quotes circulating online came from anonymous insiders, and several leaked messages referenced private production communications that had never been made public. Someone was clearly feeding the machine. The first real crack appeared when a cache of text messages between Leslie Sloan and Daily Mail reporter James Ludka surfaced in court filings. In those exchanges, Sloan allegedly provided damaging talking points about Justin's behavior, unverified claims that helped shape the tabloid narrative. When confronted, she denied wrongdoing, but the timestamps told a different story. Then came the twist. Once the lawsuit named him, Ludka reportedly reached out to Justin's legal team in a panic, pleading to be removed from the filings and claiming the tabloid had pressured him to stay silent or risk his career. Suddenly, the journalist wasn't a co-conspirator. He was a potential whistleblower. That revelation fractured the illusion of impartial journalism and exposed what looked like a coordinated media campaign designed to destroy Justin's credibility. Public perception began to shift. If the leaks were strategic, people began asking who was really controlling the narrative and why. Justin's team seized the moment. Through carefully timed disclosures, they recast Blake Lively not as a victim, but as a dominant force who had overstepped her role, pressuring rewrites, dictating edits, and allegedly threatening to withdraw promotional support unless her creative vision was met. The counterattack reframed Justin as a director trapped by power dynamics, not misconduct. With that, the story evolved from scandal to spectacle, a battle between image and evidence. The entertainment press, once united behind Blake, now fractured, with reporters questioning how much of the truth had been crafted in PR boardrooms rather than born on set. Then came the bombshell. Justin went on the offensive, not with a public statement, but with a subpoena. In a single stunning move, he filed a $400 million defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively, her publicist Leslie Sloan, and Ryan Reynolds himself, alleging a coordinated effort to destroy his reputation, seize creative control, and rewrite the film's legacy to her advantage. Overnight, Hollywood's favorite rumor transformed into its most dangerous legal drama. The line between performance and manipulation vanished completely, leaving an industry and its audience wondering how much of what they had believed was ever real. Justin Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit wasn't vague. It was a calculated strike, precise and devastating. The filings were packed with text exchanges, internal memos, and email threads that traced the progression from simple creative disagreements to full-blown accusations of misconduct. According to the complaint, Blake Lively, her publicist Leslie Sloan, and the Daily Mail had conspired to construct a defamatory narrative through selective leaks and strategically planted headlines. One section focused specifically on Sloan's alleged coordination with reporters, claiming that Blake had personally approved certain storylines designed to dismantle Justin's credibility. Even more shocking were the claims that Blake's team had intimidated journalists, restricted media access, and threatened to blacklist outlets whose coverage didn't align with their preferred narrative. This was no longer a legal dispute over a film. It had become an existential war over influence, image, and control in Hollywood. Blake's response was immediate and fierce. Her legal team dismissed the accusations as desperate retaliation from a man unwilling to face accountability, portraying the lawsuit as an attempt to silence a woman for speaking her truth. But by then, public sentiment had already begun to shift. Entertainment pages that once showcased glamorous stills from the film were now dominated by unsealed court documents, leaked screenshots, and conflicting witness statements. Then came the next shockwave. Ryan Reynolds was named as a co-defendant. Though he had not been publicly connected to the production, Justin's filing alleged that Ryan had quietly influenced rewrites, backed Blake's creative demands, and aided in pushing the director out of control of his own project. The lawsuit described him not as a bystander, but as a silent architect of Justin's professional downfall. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail, long regarded as a powerful but neutral media force, found itself pulled into the scandal. Court documents referenced internal communications and journalist testimonies, suggesting that reporters had been pressured to publish stories reinforcing Blake's side of the narrative. Articles that once portrayed Justin as volatile and controlling suddenly appeared suspiciously timed, often coinciding with major developments in Blake's legal and PR strategies. It was no longer just about what was reported, but why and by whom. Each new exhibit that surfaced chipped away at the illusion of organic outrage, revealing a chilling picture of media manipulation and coordinated reputation warfare. What began as a promising film adaptation had devolved into a reputational bloodbath. Careers teetered, alliances fractured, and with every new filing, more names were dragged into the crossfire. The spotlight that once celebrated artistry now illuminated something darker. Affidavits instead of scripts, evidence instead of creativity, and a fight not for cinematic glory, but for survival. Yet the deeper the case went, the murkier the truth became. Each revelation seemed to spawn new contradictions, exposing inconsistencies in sworn statements and blurring the line between fact and fabrication. By the time the court unsealed key documents, the media narrative had already reshaped itself. Screenshots, emails, and message logs revealed a pattern too deliberate to dismiss, each leak aligning almost perfectly with moments of production conflict. And at the center of nearly every thread stood Leslie Sloan, orchestrating coverage, feeding reporters selective details, and turning creative disputes into headline-grabbing character assassinations. Stories that began as artistic disagreements were rebranded as personal feuds. One article quoted an anonymous insider claiming Justin had shut down Blake's input entirely. Another suggested Blake had rewritten major sections of the script to save the film. But court exhibits told a different story. Internal emails, meeting transcripts, and crew statements revealed that Colleen Hoover herself, the novel's original author, had actually advised Blake to scale back her script changes, not expand them. Then came the moment that shattered the illusion of journalistic neutrality. A leaked text exchange between Daily Mail reporter James and Leslie Sloan. In the thread, James pleaded to have his name removed from court filings, admitting he had only published Sloan's quotes under pressure from his editors. The implication was explosive. The Daily Mail wasn't just reporting the story, it was actively shaping it. When James allegedly threatened to expose the planted information, the outlet responded with intimidation, warning him that speaking out could cost him his job. What had started as a PR crisis was now spiraling into allegations of manipulation, coercion, and even potential perjury. Despite her public denials, Sloan's leaked messages painted a damning portrait. She described Justin as abusive, controlling, and dismissive of both Blake and Hoover, circulating those accusations without evidence. Publicly, Blake's representatives distanced themselves from the coverage, but privately, their fingerprints were all over it. Several reporters later confirmed that article drafts were sent to Blake's team for fact-checking, only for her representatives to request edits that softened certain phrases, reshaped quotes, and reframed entire narratives to cast Blake in a sympathetic light. That level of editorial influence was nearly unprecedented in entertainment media. But Justin's side wasn't innocent either. In response, his team allegedly began feeding their own leaks to blogs and gossip sites, emails, anonymous tips, and behind-the-scenes accounts painting Blake as a domineering presence who had seized creative control, rewritten entire sequences, and even enlisted Ryan Reynolds to secretly ghostwrite portions of the script during the Hollywood strike. By this stage, truth had become just another PR tool. Both camps were engaged in an escalating information war, where every message, leak, and headline was a move in a larger game. Not about justice or storytelling, but about survival, image, and control. It became a proxy war fought through headlines and hashtags. Every article, every tweet, every whisper in the entertainment press was both a weapon and a shield. The film at the center of it all, once intended to tell a story about healing and resilience, was now consumed by chaos. As the media crossfire intensified, long-standing alliances in Hollywood began to fracture. Outlets that once championed the project grew cautious, sponsors pulled back, and the once united fandom splintered into opposing camps. Some defended Blake Lively, portraying her as a woman standing up to a domineering director. Others rallied behind Justin Baldoni, seeing him as a casualty of Hollywood's ruthless PR machinery, a man punished for challenging an industry built on perception and control. Quietly but unmistakably, Hollywood itself began to take sides. Producers, influencers, and executives signaled their loyalties not through statements, but through subtle digital gestures, who they followed, whose posts they liked, and whose names they conspicuously avoided mentioning. The unspoken consensus was clear. This was no longer a fight for truth. It was a battle for survival, and in that world, silence often spoke louder than defense. Caught in the middle was Colleen Hoover, the author whose best-selling novel had inspired the entire project. At first, she publicly supported Blake's casting and creative contributions, reassuring fans that the adaptation would honor the book's emotional depth. But as court filings surfaced and the scandal deepened, her tone shifted. Industry whispers suggested Hoover had been sidelined during production, her creative notes ignored, her input minimized, her name used for legitimacy but stripped of real authority. Though she never publicly condemned anyone, her quiet withdrawal from press appearances spoke volumes. The film that once promised empowerment had instead revealed Hollywood's oldest machinery, where image outweighs integrity and narratives aren't discovered. They're manufactured. Insiders claimed Hoover was deeply disappointed by what her story had become. Meanwhile, Blake's team attempted to rebuild support from within the industry. A few actresses and influencers posted vague messages about women's voices and standing strong, but their solidarity felt tentative, more symbolic than sincere. No major stars released statements. No unions or guilds took sides. Behind the curtain, everyone was watching, but few dared to move. Justin, however, began quietly earning allies in unexpected places. Former crew members from the It Ends With Us set spoke anonymously, contradicting the image of chaos and hostility that had dominated headlines. Several described a professional environment, claiming Blake had often rewritten scenes without consulting Justin, undermining his authority as director. And then came the most surprising ally of all, James Lasuka, the Daily Mail reporter once accused of helping Leslie Sloan plant stories. While Lasuka remained publicly neutral, private text messages told another story. He directly contradicted Leslie's version of events, admitting he had been pressured by editors to run her quotes and even calling her a liar in private exchanges. Though he never gave a formal interview, those leaked messages became a powerful piece of ammunition in Justin's legal campaign. What had begun as a glossy Hollywood love story was now a brutal public reckoning, one fought not on film sets or red carpets, but in courtrooms, inboxes, and timelines. Boxes and timelines. Even Blake's inner circle began to show cracks. Reports surfaced of growing friction between her PR team and the media consultants struggling to contain the fallout. One insider claimed that Ryan Reynolds himself had grown uncomfortable with how far things had spiraled, especially after his name appeared in the legal filings. Whether or not it was true, the rumor alone dented Blake's public image. Then came a carefully worded statement from SAG-AFTRA, condemning toxic work environments and reaffirming the right of actors to feel safe. Though no names were mentioned, the timing and tone seemed unmistakably in Blake's favor. For her camp, it was a moment of validation. For others, it raised questions. Was the union standing on principle or yielding to the influence of one of Hollywood's most powerful PR machines? In this new phase of the scandal, silence became strategy. Every repost, like, or refusal to comment functioned as a coded signal. Alliances were no longer declared. They were implied. The battlefield shifted from social media to perception itself, where timing and tone carried as much weight as any statement. Careers hung in the balance, and as the lawsuit edged toward trial, the war of public sympathy gave way to a colder arena. The courtroom. Here, image meant nothing. Headlines couldn't spin evidence, and every claim had to withstand the scrutiny of oath and record. Justin Baldoni's legal team entered prepared and methodical, presenting a case built on timelines, emails, internal memos, production notes, and text messages. Their narrative was deliberate yet deeply personal, a portrait of a director undermined from within, vilified through leaks, and stripped of creative control over the film he helped bring to life. They highlighted glaring contradictions in Blake's timeline, questioning why her team never filed a harassment complaint during or right after production, why those allegations appeared only once she allegedly took creative control, and why her publicist, Leslie Sloan, had told one story to reporters in August and a different one under oath in December. The turning point came when text messages from Daily Mail journalist James Lucca contradicted Leslie's version of events. He admitted privately that he had been pressured into publishing her claims and even referred to her as a liar. When he later retracted those statements publicly, Justin's team alleged coercion, submitting messages that suggested he feared losing his job, possibly under outside pressure from either the Daily Mail or Blake's camp. If true, it meant the entire public narrative, the headlines, the interviews, the outrage had been orchestrated through manipulation. Blake's lawyers countered forcefully, branding the lawsuit a retaliatory smear campaign meant to silence a woman speaking out. They leaned on her spotless reputation, her charity work, and her long career unmarred by controversy, arguing that Justin's case was driven by resentment and ego. But as proceedings dragged on, the polished veneer of celebrity began to wear thin. In court, fame couldn't obscure the inconsistencies. Blake's team invoked the First Amendment, insisting that harsh press coverage, even if negative, didn't equal defamation. Yet as the hearings continued, the clean legal arguments began to blur. Documents and text evidence showed her team had far greater control over the narrative than they publicly claimed. Some of the most damning quotes about Justin, once attributed to sources close to production, were now traceable to Leslie Sloan or, in certain cases, to Blake herself. As the judge reviewed the competing motions, requests to strike evidence, seal exhibits, and dismiss counts, the legal tide began to shift. A few minor claims were dismissed, but the most serious ones, defamation, interference, and reputational damage, remained. That meant depositions were inevitable, forcing everyone to testify under oath. Hollywood runs on illusion, but depositions don't. Blake, Leslie, Ryan Reynolds, and top Wayfair Studios executives would soon face questions about what they knew, when they knew it, and what they said privately versus publicly. Behind the scenes, panic grew. Lawyers combed through old emails and call logs. Settlement offers were quietly floated, then withdrawn. Both sides dug in deeper, realizing the fight was no longer just about winning, it was about survival. And while the industry held its breath for the next hearing, one truth loomed large. The courtroom drama was far from over. The most explosive revelations might still be hidden, sealed in confidential exhibits, or waiting to be exposed by a single subpoena, or by one witness finally ready to tell the truth. When the dust finally began to settle, no one emerged unscathed. Not Blake, not Justin, not Ryan, and not even the media outlets that once proudly dictated the narrative. What began as a heartfelt adaptation of a beloved romance novel had spiraled into one of Hollywood's most divisive scandals, exposed